Thanks for participating and leaving comments. This is the long-awaited second part following on from Part 1A and 1B. This section consolidates the comparison of the two worlds to further clarify the differences when thinking of defense strategies against a multiple attack. Remember, this was written as an instructional guide to help interested martial artists to successfully navigate the varying defense strategies against a multiple attack. The aim is not to highlight styles or systems but to highlight gaps in current knowledge that have not been attended to. This section broadens perspectives when looking at the impossible problem when dealing with many attackers at the same time. Enjoy. This section adds to theory. Abridged edition. The End of Martial Arts. Two Worlds. Part 2A. By Lormun Mac. Copyright 2013 Lormun Mac. This audio version is licensed for your personal enjoyment only. This audiobook may not be resold. Warning: it is strongly recommended that children and adults who are not experienced in martial arts should not attempt application of the principles of this book unless under the supervision of a currently certified instructor, coach in the fighting arts. My belief is that there has been other people developing similar and hopefully more effective skills than my humble attempts. My aim was to develop and expand views on how to fend off multiple attackers that will delight interested pundits and help martial artists on their journey. Please listen to Part 1A and 1B before listening to Part 2A and B, as the concepts and jargon will not make sense. Preamble. It is best to know your enemy's strengths and weaknesses before engaging both mental and physical sides of battle. This goes without saying. Nobody asks for a fight unless they know they have a chance of winning. This captures what martial arts has been doing to remain relevant in the public eyes. Almost all activities in the arts are focused on demonstrating who has the best fighting methods. In recent times, the changes in competitive arenas have done well to substantiate the best of the best. By fighting we mean winner takes all. In the martial arts world, only about 30% of exponents are gutsy enough to test their skills under actual fighting pressures. Traditional approaches are by far the largest number, all working hard to improve their theoretical fighting effectiveness from technical breakdowns. It is the land of the infinite, where each technical construct is cherished for its historical pedigree, somehow confirming its unquestionable fighting durability. Part 2 of the Two Worlds aims to uncover some of the limitations in the fight world. It is well understood, combat sports have taken center stage, driving interested pundits into specializing all their skills into a focal arena. Current trends are super focused on the two-person fight, encapsulated by the stand-up and ground game. This means much has been made of the most effective grappling and striking skills, all directed to competitive fighting. There is no question that the gladiators of the day are super athletes and very proficient when applying their wares. Only a naive traditional martial artist would step in the ring to challenge the status quo. But when the situation expands to multiple assaults, solutions are not so clear-cut. So, how do current martial training methods stack up to real multiple attack situations? I start by suggesting that martial artists are over-conditioned for fighting and have severely weakened their effectiveness when the situation is difficult to control, like the chaos of a multiple attack. It all begins with teachers demonstrating in slow motion, those on-the-floor examples of techniques that are derived from excellent fighting skills. The verbal mantra against many attackers generally suggests an amplification of effort, and you will be successful against many attackers. It is misleading to say the least. The assumption of more effort seldom gets tested under a close to real pressure test. I ask you as the reader, where was the well-motivated group of attackers that is ready to down you as fast as they can? Simply, they are assuming effectiveness based on their imaginations from fighting, so the outcomes are based on fabricated beliefs. Martial arts practitioners have built large numbers of loyal followings by spruiking credible insights to what happens when facing many attackers. The detailed defensive maneuvers are delivered with utmost confidence, but in slow motion and with no continuity. It is no wonder why the current batch of gladiators are motivated to overtrain, hoping to achieve unquestionable solutions. The fighter's divide is a result of how we collect and collate knowledge, usually self-selected and subsequently biased, thus distorted by how the battlefield is viewed and where the dangers lie. When it comes to facing a group attack, the attitude is, we will deal with it when it happens, which is a far cry from knowing your enemy or the concerns surrounding a one-on-one fight. It is not a wise choice when it is the most dangerous situation you may have to face. Current viewpoints and solutions for dealing with multiple attackers is fraught with delusions of grandeur derived from imagined victories over what is truly an incredibly difficult situation. Where does it all go wrong? Well, it starts with your limited understandings of self and the opposing group motivated to down you fast. It is well understood that a multiple attack is the most difficult situation to prepare for. So, as a response, the martial arts world tends to lean more to what is controllable, such as what is learnt to dominate an opponent in a fighting ring. Therefore, the consensus is of the opinion that defense strategies against a group attack is all a pipe dream, and those who claim it is possible are just misleading people. I agree with these types of opinions after seeing what is on offer. My intention in this book is to reawaken people's interest in the impossible, such as fending off a group attack, but with a whole new paradigm referred to as the energy world. Please read Part 1 of the audiobook 2 Worlds for a definition. As mentioned before, I did not want to ignore my chances to finding effective ways to deal with more than one attacker. My main interest was to avoid being injured and to leave the situation alive. By looking at survival evolutions in the animal kingdom, one can find confidences in the varied approaches used against the worst of what a multiple attack can offer. I am sure, as martial artists, we are motivated to improve our skills, especially when there are conditioned limits placed on our choices to find effective strategy, like fighting in a ring. I think pundits are too focused and excited by the advancements found in the two-person cockfight. It has proven to be a good way to find the best person to represent the current perceptions created in the fight world. But to have the same vision of winning against a group attack is just nuts. It is not a series of single fights where you can isolate one attacker at a time. It is not just a matter of going harder and faster with your trusted skills used to win a two-person fight. The current use of techniques has become the stopgap solutions touted as good enough, knowing there is little chance of ever facing a multiple attack. It should be said, ignorance is not going to be bliss when facing aggressive attackers. I would like to highlight, multiple attacks on a single person are happening more than people think. The issue being, group attacks are not viewed that often on social media, but when they do appear, the attack is pulled apart as a series of two-person encounters by fighting experts. Even more concerning, multiple attack stress testing is seldom practiced in class. If done, it tends to be a novelty and easily put in the too hard basket. The result is, it leaves students with incomplete impressions, built on those play-acting multiple attack demonstrations done in slow motion, having been capped off with imagined victories. Yes, the instructors insinuate all is based on reality by simply upping dials on harder and faster, finally stressing the point, it will clear those nasty attackers away. But there is a big elephant in the room. Majority of so-called reality demonstrations use students as attacking dummies that are much too eager to capitulate. It is no wonder none of this translates to successfully fending off a well-motivated group of attackers hell-bent to do you in. With these comments, you better be aware your preparations will not go well, knowing martial conditioning was designed for defense against one attacker. I would suggest your cherished fighting skills could trigger an even more violent feeding frenzy when facing many attackers. Knowing a well-motivated group tends to act with similar drives captured by the predatory attack scene in the animal kingdom. Every moment during the attack is unpredictable. What is missing in those imagined martial demonstrations is that everything will unfold extremely fast after first contact from all directions. It is obvious a single person will not have the resources to fend off a multiple onslaught. This is nothing like the movies, where the hero waits to pick off one attacker at a time, victorious in that the victim, even though injured, will fight another day. People are like animals. During violence they become opportunistic, especially in a group, ready to strike when the time is right. The difficulties encapsulating multiple attacker defense seems outside the minds of martial trainers when considering solutions. It appears their instructive solutions evolved from their chosen mental simulations, viewed in an imagined world played out in slow motion, connected to experiences derived from one-on-one encounters. Yes, imagined technical solutions can be terrific in one's thoughts, but misses the extremely important ingredient like urgency. In truth, there is no time for a protracted fight with any of the attackers, so the solution has to be speedy, compared to socially organized fights. Deceptive reality. In one, the martial advantage in the fight world of defense is one-on-one deception. Beginning with how people choose to spend enormous amounts of time to train harder than their enemies, as well as finding effective and new fight strategies that can easily counter the unsuspecting opponent's defenses. It must be a fun game, otherwise people would call the tricks out more often. Competitions are a great way to air your deceptive successes by outsmarting even good opponents. Again, none of these excitements translate to a multiple attack. I ask you, why would you be motivated to find a way to fend off a multiple attack when deception is such a fun game? My sense is, multiple attack defense is not high on the list of things to do in the martial arts world. The fight game has enough excitements to keep people entertained for years to come. Even though the fight game can be extremely bloody and dangerous, it is surprisingly acceptable to aspiring artists. On the other hand, multiple attack exercises are more mentally challenging, under the guise that it is an extremely uncomfortable encounter. In my mind, the lack of interest seems to originate from the leaders in martial arts. They like to shut the door to possible solutions when facing group attacks by spruiking their uninspiring expert opinions derived from their own thought experiments. It is no wonder few inspired artists will venture into the world of multiple attackers to find solutions. This is why I think the subject in this book is the first of its kind. As mentioned, the fighting world is filled with many interesting deceptions to dismantle intent from an attacker. We are very familiar with the value of pointing a gun to deter aggressors. The overt message is, the gun can do really bad things if fired, so back off. The effect to deter aggression is in the minds of the attacking force. We make assumptions that all people will act accordingly to a gun and its potential. This means when it comes to martial arts, the practitioner must inform the attackers they mean business to be as effective as a gun as a deterrent. The gun meme has been broadly implanted into people's minds, constituting the ultimate self-defense strategy. You could ask, why not just buy a gun? It is cheaper and takes a lot less time to master. Well, for aspiring martial artists it is more exciting to dominate the situation physically and take advantage of the far-reaching social benefits of deception. It is always great to hear others say, that person is a good fighter. You got to admit, that is worth a lot of Bitcoin in the martial artist's mind. To make defense applications easier outside of the ring, the strategy usually comes with a preamble encompassing some form of deception. It is not wise to fight out of the ring without a good deception and a good understanding of your advantage. Now, I know that it is not wise to argue face to face with a well-trained martial artist proficient in the stand-up and ground games. But deception makes the street fight much easier. Everybody who fights freely for the public believes they have the edge. It is still going to hurt. This is why people in the game say, do you want to fight? Truth is, there is no amount of acting that can delay the inevitable of having a fight when deception is used. Deception is important, it saves time, and it is a natural response when it comes to surviving a fight. Even a small kid can win against a far better fighter by using deception. Having a hidden advantage over the enemy is everything. Knowing inattention can be fatal. The more you want to win and look good, the less you want to inform the attacker of your advantages. Posturing occurs solely to intimidate and provoke the opponent to act without stealth. The catch with deception, it always creates a very narrowed focus on the presenting target. To help understand this, just review the execution of a preemptive strike. All this means is, we are over-conditioned to find the best advantage long before the event takes place. It takes super discipline and extreme focus to blast your way through an unsuspecting attacker. Great as the strategy may be, you are blind to events happening all around you. I have seen many street situations turn from a one-on-one encounter to multiple fights. It's the unseen opportunist in the crowd who ducks in and raises the stakes to a multiple assault and then runs. The issue is like hiding the gun aiming to deter aggression, not realizing it has taken your attention away from the bigger picture unfolding around you. Yes, deception works well against limited attackers, but real situations have unpredictable dangers coming from everywhere with their own advantages. Chapter 7: Where is the magic? In the energy world we believe there is untapped real magic out there. The aim is to take advantage of inattention to affect the attackers en masse like a magician executing a trick. It is all about tapping into people's inability to broaden their attention from a stress focus. As mentioned in the preamble, deception is the fighter's advantage when facing one opponent outside the ring. Just by asking a question, the effect is the same for all people. They have to focus on an answer, no matter how hard they try to ignore the query. Questions are a great way to make aggressive people defenseless for a moment. Magicians are even more sophisticated at making us query how a trick is done, shifting attention away from the real magic by creating intentional mental blindness. The power of magic is your inability to recall any of the missing information. Making something that should be normal into magic triggers our need to find answers to make the world appear controllable again. Attention and inattention are both weaknesses in the world of self-defense. It just means attention creates inattention. To feign a strike is firstly to create attention and then strike where the opponent has no attention. This is central to creating the magic to affect the attacker's intent to do harm. If your actions are novel enough, you create the queries to intensify attention by focusing the opponent on differences, leaving the attacker asking questions that need to be answered. The inquiry creates an internalization of thoughts, thus by being different you have created an effect on the opponent's intent to do harm. It causes unwanted hesitation and inaction. The magician's mindset has to be very aware of the value of questions being asked, allowing the magic to appear real. All inquiries are the root of all effects. For example, what the hell am I talking about? If this has grabbed your attention, then I have magically internalized your thoughts, hence my job is done. Let's take the classic bouncer statement, I am not here to fight, then boom, and the target hits the ground. Misdirection and deception are efficient ways to affect the attacker without physical contact to create defensive advantage. With experience, creating effect from deception is easy, but it is what happens next that determines success. Remember, life is but an act, all aiming to affect another person. It is only when we see our handiwork as good or bad, can we decide to move to the next deception. This indicates there is a hesitation between each step of the desired series of tricks. Time is lost when checking our tricks before the next move. It is this checking behavior magicians exploit. People are socially conditioned to utilize their deceptions at strategic times, leaving them ignorant of the contrived act of delivering a smile, a nod, or even a pat on the back. All suggesting $1 million relationship. But ask yourself, how many times has the smiling face led you up the garden path? Like a good con, people are too eager to help and comply. You may say, I am not dumb, but the magician feeds of this attitude to the max, knowing intelligence is very easy to manipulate. Belief is the sacred cow of smarts, the best lever to take people on inattentional rides. This is why the preemptive strike works so well due to our social conditioning. We are natural problem solvers, and any inquiry makes us vulnerable to exploitation. Do you want to fight me on this? How I like the fight question, it never fails to grab people's attention. So, ask yourself, how big a hole does it leave in their defenses? Got you again and again and so on. It is only natural to comply. Normally it is not a problem and is considered antisocial when pointed out. But we are conditioned to tango, attending to all requests and play. You have signed many unwritten contracts to engage with many requests encountered each day. To be a person operating in the energy world, one has to be very aware when a contract is signed, that is the time you are most vulnerable. It is something to really consider and exploit when facing overwhelming odds of a multiple attack with their hidden weapons. Just as a reminder, magicians are very good at grabbing the audience's attention. Why can't a single person take this know-how to disengage the intent of multiple attackers? All that needs to be taken advantage of is people's need to connect socially, a universal habit we all participate in. This understanding is about collecting universal insights to know our enemy, be it a single person or a group. Martial artists are too focused on technical excellence when it comes to saving their heads. They know by fighting harder than anyone else in a selected environment their goals can be achieved. Also, mastering energy-conserving strategies can help you to stay level-headed when under pressure of many rounds. It is comforting to know training technical repetitions is the gold standard to get ahead in the game. Each of these self-assuring beliefs is exploitable, beginning with expressing how good they are, will weaken their attention to a threat. Intimidation is another way to weaken exponents' defenses by attacking their self-worth from a higher moral ground. Not to forget there is strength in numbers, the advantage that is exploited by multiple attackers, simply airing their firepower to effectively intimidate their targets into submission. This should not be a surprise, knowing we face multiple mental assaults each day, all capable of intimidation. How is it possible that we ignore so many threats daily? Simply by remaining busy, living the good life where safety is maintained by avoiding frightening events and following the rule of law. We are good at suppressing the lure of risky situations by our self-preserving instincts, based on expecting the worst when deviating from the norm. It is only natural to create safe mental blind spots, which will allow the mind more freedom to ignore expectant violent threats. While the resultant illusory world appears safe, the brain now has increased capacity to appreciate more rewarding tasks. Martial artists are conditioned with violence in mind. They end up too eager to make their praiseworthy techniques the focus of an expectant threat. They have failed to suppress their self-serving ideas for the more efficient life-saving responses. They focus on seeing multiple attackers as a problem to solve with their martial proficiencies, taking valued attention away from the more effective flight survival response. The fight response has become the focus of choice for success. This is why martial approaches are vulnerable to a group assault. I know this does not go down well in the martial arts world, but it is the attachment to the social game of winning that causes the most trouble during a life threat. So, who are the people out there focusing on praiseworthy fight skills as the only solution to a multiple attack? Is their cup empty enough to reset the mind to recalculate one's safety when facing many aggressive attackers? A magician has the capability to mesmerize a skeptical crowd with attentional bending tricks, thus avoiding the threat of being caught out as a fake. It is the code of secrecy that protects the magician's art, leaving the crowds clueless of how the trick is done. It is these social rules and barriers that can hold a group of attackers at bay, forcing them to find solutions to regain control over the uncooperative target. The group usually takes the lead by playing the dominant game. I ask you, are you conditioned to respond in kind to an insurmountable threat? What is it we need to mentally suppress to remain disconnected from the group and focus on safety first? It is expected you will go down fast, all for the group's safety. But what happens when you become the defensive magician, able to mesmerize attackers by being more normal than normal, blinding and binding their minds to the unavoidable query? Normally the victim responds in kind to the attacker's requests. This will help the attackers be more effective. In this case it is likely you will fight back. It is exactly what is expected to trigger the group to swarm and down you. The mental trick for you is in plain sight, by expressing you are the problem early, which empties your cup first while overfilling the attacker's cup. You must begin with realizing you are standing in your own mental mud, which stops you finding the path to a safe exit. It is solely up to you to identify safe exits, before the attackers can grab your attention. If the trick has worked, the attackers will have hesitated before activating the violent assault. If you stay connected, they will be resorting to further intimidation until you accept they are the dominant threat. Accepting your role as the victim is as good as being injured even before any physical barrage. The group is always well prepared in advance, expecting setbacks, by eventually revealing their hidden weapons to assist in your demise. The only controllable aspects of the situation are your inner beliefs, based on knowing the attackers are not the problem. Yes, they are determined to grab attention and show off their strengths, aiming to conquer your resolve. They need you to submit to be successful, and this is only true if you are willing to carry the monkey. We are conditioned to play our role, be it the victim or fighter. It is at the core of all interactions. In the energy world we intend to be the magician on stage, never to allow the audience to suspect any deceptions. It is obvious you have disappeared as a member of the audience and gained the lead to direct what problems are to be solved. If you accept the propositions of fraud from the crowd, it will be your destruction. The crowd's intimidation is but a social trick, a deception to castigate your abilities, easily used by a good magician to lure the defenseless crowd in for the real trick. The moral here is, it was never the magician's problem. You see, hear, and do nothing only to be trapped by the attackers, because you have seen yourself as the victim. You have lost time and internalized to think of defensive thoughts, ignoring the more immediate flight response. You rather hesitate and activate the fight response, promoted by years of positive social conditioning. Flight, on the other hand, is truly a disengaging response, requiring you to remain in control of the self, instantly moving your attention away from the attackers. It's those insecure aggressors that need your attention to do their worst. If you connect with them and hesitate, your inner strengths of the master magician will be gone. This is why the energy world wants you to be aware of the weaknesses of taking up social roles, like being a fighter. Who is invited? Nobody can win a battle without a sufficient effect, be it mental or physical. We all recognize submission, be it a knockout or screaming for mercy, as the gold standard. Martial artists spend a lifetime working on skills that will decrease the opponent's resistance to zero. It is only natural to want to win in our society, guided by the light to dominate all possible challenges. It is accepted to target people who disrespect the status quo. In society, no one wants to be that loser, so fighting for supremacy will go on for eternity. It is satisfying to know recent evolutions in martial arts have produced good fighters for the matched game. Like all good sports, training harder than anyone else allows you the chance to win. Society needs to create idealized winners to reinforce the current rule-based agendas. This gives power to those who lead the morals of the newly developing fighting ideals. The resulting beliefs increase division in an already unsettled society. Life threats are still best observed from a distance and left unchallenged. Society is designed so it assures people that it is made safe by rules and barriers. Thus, the problems that get to be emphasized are the ones that have a chance to be controlled. Socialized people rather not consider venturing into uncharted territories, fearing they may not be prepared to escape the realities due to safety concerns. The energy world wants to address this fear by viewing problems from a different perspective. The normal response to a group attack is fear, followed by the realization it is an insurmountable problem to solve. Even the clear-minded martial artist aims to avoid the possibility of facing a violent multiple attack. Even so, there are the few who like to venture into dangerous territory. It offers thrills and excitement by pushing the limits on experiencing fear. But from a social point of view, the thought of facing multiple attackers must feel like walking a tightrope over a canyon without the safety harness. Knowingly, martial pundits try to redirect attention away from experiencing a life threat firsthand because it will expose the limits of current approaches to fighting. This is like how we think a car is safe until there is a serious accident. Who wants to think of the worst outcome? The rewards of winning offers excitements above and beyond the fear of having bones broken and life threatened. The pound and ground and the blood should be a deterrent, and yet people come to worship in their thousands. It is the magic of sports, a cleverly devised social construct with rules and winners. It is a victory over common sense, but who cares if there is a following? But this does not apply to a person who has to face a violent group attack. It remains a situation where few will venture. It is important to understand the energy world will not satisfy those needy people that require recognition and victory. It is not something you train for, just to climb the tallest mountain and expect recognition. Pundits in the resistance world enjoy the idea of competition, always aiming secretly to be better than another person. In the energy world we suppress the desire to win, leaving a huge gap to fill to enjoy life. It is only natural to fight back and take up the challenge if there is a chance to win. The social goal is always to get ahead, which enlivens the mind to produce incredible strategy. People want to be first to present answers to difficult questions but find it hard to handle the truth. But the truth is, there are too many answers that need further investigation. My hope is that pundits will challenge the veracity of these presented ideas and advance them to improve insights to difficult problems. Many of my ideas over the years were lost in translation and hard to grasp. For example, I used to express the idea of standing where the attackers want to stand. Seemingly nonsensical from a safety point of view, and how could this apply to the problem of a multiple attack? It may be another case of trying to take a horse to water. It does not mean the horse will drink. Aiming to take people's thoughts to a new place is not as simple as telling the listener the trick. So, with the evolution of my thoughts, the more recent take on a stand where the attacker stands is, see each attacker as a momentary safe space to help you move to the next attacker and next without ever slowing to fight. Each of these well-meaning explanations are but a distraction to an even better strategy relating to the ideal of speed. Whatever the explanation, it is all about moving the body mass while maintaining high levels of momentum. If you are not aware of basic physics, this is equivalent to storing energy in a moving system, ready to be utilized. Strangely, none of these comments will get the recognition they deserve from the fight crowd. People in the resistance world have a need to imagine every defensive move for every approaching attacker. The viewpoint all depends on what side of the coin you view your solutions. The energy world uses the catalyst of speed to activate strategy, while the resistance world needs to visualize resistance to drive a response. In the resistance world, those slowed mental simulations are promoted by on-the-floor demonstrations that enhance the value perception of each counter-move. Demonstrations by teachers are meant to only mimic possible scenarios with the bonus of step-by-step explanations that end with that winning move. Seldom do these one-on-one demonstrations venture into pressure testing, where the aggressors are multiple and motivated to down you fast. It is a far cry to what really happens in a group attack that tends to unfold in both rapid and unpredictable ways. There is no time to step behind one attacker, then magically begin picking off multiple aggressors. Pundits, deep down, know their solutions are faulty, lacking the speeds needed to move through multiple resistances effectively. This is why the energy world introduced solutions that work at speed, specifically designed for multiple attacks. The two worlds approach was conceived to effectively open the mind's door to a whole new set of perspectives. Just like a coin, we are only privy to one side of the coin at a time. Case in point, the energy world views each attacker as someone to help you get away, not someone to dominate and control. This shift in perspective automatically asks for new parameters to follow to view outcomes. Now, speed is given a whole new meaning, relating to maintaining velocity of one's body mass, rather than having a fast strike. The outcome is that attackers do not get the attention or the time they need to execute their defensive moves. So, what will one see from the resistance world? A person coming in at speed which will spark off an immediate counter-response. The deception used is the looming effect that tricks the resistance fighter to prepare for impact. The new ingredient is the unrelenting speed of mass movement that tends to take over the mind of the attacker and pressures defenses. The missing insight in the attacker's imagined defenses is the effect of speed. It tends to outrun the attacker's defenses. Speed is to be maintained always towards an exit, not as an advantage to impact and overpower the attacker. In the resistance world there is an over-focus on control and defensive responses aiming to submit the target. This approach is great in a two-person encounter, but not in a multiple attack. The real value of speed is the freedom to maneuver through the resistance of multiple attackers and not slow, making this a completely different outcome to what a fighter would expect. It is not rocket science to realize resisting each attacker takes up too much time, with a corresponding rapid reduction in one's energy reserves. The energy world aims to suppress the desire to escalate the situation into a battle of multiple wills. An enlightening experience in the energy world is you do not have the intention to acknowledge the approaching attackers as a problem. You want to view the attackers as safe stepping stones across a sea of resistance. This prevents you considering slowing your progress for the sake of a fight with any attacker. The aim is to always move at speed to maintain one's focus on the path of least resistance. At no time do you acknowledge the attacker's intent to do you harm, you just remain at speed to the end of the encounter. The catch for most readers is you have the urge to interact with each attacker, based on a conditioned desire to fight. Think of each expected fight as being an ill-conceived marriage that will not end well. Fighting is a great way to connect with attackers and a surefire way to empty the tank of gas before safety is achieved. It is like being held to ransom needing to interact with no real benefit. This is where speed becomes the antisocial pill, driving you forward with no intention to interact with any of the attackers. This strategy becomes way more credible than first thought, knowing defensive attempts against multiple attackers tends to be half-hearted. So why even try? The only way to be unaffected by the attackers is by deciding not to be the patsy, which leaves the attackers wondering what happened to their target. If possible, choosing to run away early will change the attacker's perspective from being able to intimidate to the new act of chasing the target down. The choice of moving at speed away from the threat is yours alone. You initiated the response by instinctively suppressing thoughts relating to defensive strategy that usually holds you to ransom, forcing you to stand still. It is as if you are cornered by incomplete mental expectancies that leaves you stagnant. The takeaway here is your exiting body speed controls the attacker's choices, thus avoiding immediate self-destruction. By stopping the urge to connect, this will determine your success to move freely through or away from the threat. It has to be understood the attackers have all the firepower and by rights should win the day. But what if the attackers grab you? Well, that is not solely your own decision anymore. Yes, you are grabbed, but you are now in a very bad marriage. It does not matter who grabs who, you are a couple now, becoming even closer than you want. The truth was, you were grabbed long before the physical grab, knowing the tango started when you decided to rub a neck, already signing the contract to participate in your demise. So why did you hesitate and watch the situation unfold, and then indicate, you will be the next patsy? I am sure by this time, you will be hit by an unseen coward punch. Everything that is happening now is because you let it. You decided to slow your progress to look and listen, letting your personal endeavors be replaced by your bad habits of needing social connections while suppressing your need for personal safety. Worse still, you stopped being busy to answer the prevailing social question. I like to tell my inquiring students, if you were invisible, then you will have no questions to answer. Magicians also know to keep their tricks invisible, otherwise it is not magic. More importantly, magicians know to never slow the act or acknowledge any failings. The aim is to always keep moving as if nothing has happened. It is only when you check other people's responses in a dangerous situation that you get grabbed and down you go. The energy world aims to avoid social manipulations enforced by the status quo. We are conditioned to fear the worst by being trapped in anticipation, expectation, and hesitation. Independence of thought should be given a higher status to overcome the social traps and grabs. The unintentional enforcement begins when we connect with people, so we tend to habitually respond in kind. We are socially conditioned to be the patsy when facing greater forces. This makes it almost impossible to avoid being the target in front of a group attack. It is not if, but when you connect, that is when you have agreed to be the target. This comes from our desire to be human, always needing others to complete one's social role. The energy world becomes the way to repackage social norms by allowing concepts such as freedom to circumvent the social forces that are supposed to know better. This repackaged view cannot survive unless you change your reward structures. As mentioned, nobody wins in the energy world, there is only the joy of staying free from socially imposed controls. Let's start with the socially organized person who has the tendency to want to argue they are free to make their own decisions. This is true, knowing rules can benefit those people who seek a sense of dominance over others. The passive-aggressive approach illogically supports the status quo of beliefs and values. People are taught to fight for the lead, then asked for respect at the cost of other aspiring leaders. It is just a part of social strata to be seen as more useful and effective than others. Submission is the passive preserving response, awaiting the right moment to regain dominance again. It is only natural that social connections are essential for any mutual recognition, be it good or bad. At times we would like some magic to break the connection when faced with the prospect of a horrible attack. It has to be a given that the group of attackers exists because they have chosen a patsy. This is no different to accepting a fight. We are born to be attention-grabbing machines, not wanting to be ignored. This is done under the guise of helping others by being there. The equation of connection is not seen as a problem, but as an advantage to grow one's position. If you decided not to be present, there would be no reason to play games or strike first to win the day. To ask people to ignore their social urges for gains is no easy task. We are brought up as a social product, conditioned to perform well for others. We are problem-solving geniuses, ready to enhance any social request. Problems are the blood of the thinking brain. This is why sales gains so much attention, promoting advantage for improved social health. Nobody will be spared from being connected once the proposition is endorsed by the populace. We do not fight questions, but only the beliefs that back up the answers. Fighting tends to be the way to meet social expectations to justify methods that are meant to help the greater good of people. Schooling is one big battlefield of doing good for society. It would be a sin to suggest it is not appropriate for all. The best defense against the social fight is not to fall into the patsy role. Fight games are meant for people who like to fight for dominance and lead, where violence is not a fight as such, it is antisocial and disliked. The only defense against social opportunists is situational awareness, which tends to be surprisingly easy to say. We are social beings needing the superior side of the connection to be human, making it difficult to disconnect from violence. We are born with a rubber neck designed to connect, even during the heat of a life threat. We are like babies turning their vision to faces without question. I am sure people would like to be that disappearing rabbit at times, especially when facing extreme threat, but we are not skilled in advanced magic. Ask yourself, why are you hell-bent to follow social rules and what would happen if you broke this cycle? How do you avoid being attracted to the lure of aggression? There are no free lunches when people are asking for your blood. In the resistance world, attackers know they got their victim trapped at the first sign of hesitation. So, what does the prospective martial artist want as extra tools for protection against a multiple attack? If you believe the martial spin, there are seemingly fantastic solutions that will down the opponents, allowing you to bathe in amazing victories. Truthfully, the not-so-secret answer is to train harder than everyone else and make sure you test your concoctions in an appropriate pressure test. Excessive training is the great martial arts ruse that is missed and replaced by the imaginary world of victories. It is no wonder up-and-coming martial heroes are wanting victims to test their wares, meaning the organized gameplay has spilled onto the streets, resulting in increased antisocial behavior directed towards unsuspecting people. The underlying drive for social violence is the dominance game. My thoughts are, it would be wiser to be a little smarter and avoid the social call to arms and leave common opinions alone. There is magic to be learnt, but technical magic is downright dangerous. The hardest task for martial heroes is clearing some of the earwax out, thus opening some space between the ears for new ideas. This can be achieved by knowing the type of situation you are training for, the ring, a street brawl, displaying excellence, or a multiple attack. This does not mean deducing reality from series of fantastical technical movements derived from some ancient library of passed-down memories. The recreation of past imagined insights can be confirming, but without pressure testing it only fortifies the dreamers. The martial arts way has wised up in recent times, pressure testing their wares thoroughly before entering the arenas. I say, train what you will, but beware of imagined glory without appropriate testing. This has been the case for multiple attack strategies, where so-called experts for decades strutted on the floor successes against cooperative dummies. This has to be a recipe for disaster when leaving the security of the four white walls. When facing a group attack, there are no second chances to repeat past strategies and dream up better solutions. It is obvious that a multiple attack needs to be seen through the lens of many violent events all happening at once. Once confronted by many attackers, there is little chance of escaping the worst. One can only hope it is your lucky day when trapped. The good thing about the energy world is exponents do not want anything to do with self-promotion due to fighting. This is held in check by considering the attackers are not the problem to solve. As mentioned, if you are aware of an impending multiple attack early enough, you could stay invisible by avoiding being there in the first place. It is wise to realize it is your choice to participate, even before you decide to fight your way through the attackers. Then we have the problem-creating experts, those wonderful pundits who are too eager to propose situations that are impossible to solve. For example, what would you do if you were tied up, hanging from the ceiling by your legs and the group is attacking you? Again, it is the lure of the impossible situation that sparks off your fearful and defensive responses that traps you on the imaginary roller coaster of being the martial imposter. The milk is spilt, why make a fuss of it? It is too late to salvage, so learn to live with your absurd imaginations. As a counter-response, I suggest an even more impossible situation to solve, thus allowing my thoughts to normalize. It is a little sad to know that the person asking the questions is only expressing their inner fear response, a messed-up reality that encompasses anticipation, expectation, and hesitation. Expecting the worst is normal, but it is an example of hesitation. A common street situation starts out as a two-person social fight, which is fine for a martial artist, but it can soon turn into a much more dangerous all-out street brawl. To me, the obvious question to ask is, why were you there in the first place? I will let you answer that, because I am not you. In the energy world, the ideal is to be invisible long before the attack takes place. So, avoiding the situation altogether is best, but where is the fun in that? Being a social being, you need a challenge to show off your great fighting skills, be it in a ring or on the street. This is a product of peer pressure in the fight world. It is a great recipe for a perfect storm, best found in any arena where you can submit an unsuspecting target. As a social being, you are liable to your peers. Not to be left out, your first response is always to your allegiances, a habit of being socially responsible. In the energy world, we want the opposite, that is to become disconnected from inappropriate behavior and focus more on self-direction. This means little to a person who fears disconnection and has become unaware of how they are drawn into a danger zone by others. It takes little effort to leave a social disagreement and let it unfold without you in attendance. The suggested trick is self-discipline, or is it common sense to disconnect or go off and do your own thing? In the moment of experiencing the shock of being attacked, it seems virtually impossible to step aside and disappear. Worse still, due to hesitation, you now have become a target of aggression and recognize you will soon feel the pain. I suggest switching thoughts and get moving immediately to avoid the mental grabs and the mud of anticipation, expectation, and hesitation. Maybe you should suggest you need to go to the toilet urgently as you run in the opposite direction. Is this an example of acting early due to situational awareness, or you could stand there shaking, waiting for the onslaught? Hint: if you are a martial artist, you will stand there wanting to control the situation, trapped in unrealistic thoughts. Is this just a sign of conformity, knowing your chosen position will not end well? We are now aware that social conditioning can hold you to ransom. I'm sure you have seen verbal tirades and physical altercations that make no sense. We are taught to respond in kind, no matter what the original intent is. People are socially organized, which uncovers their chosen role. The energy world aims to disrupt a person's social impressions relating to peer pressures, meaning the request to defend your social status can now be ignored. One-upmanship may be seen as the stepping stone of advantage to dominate peers, but what happens when you do not see attackers as the problem? I would suggest the attacker's status as dangerous people is under threat. If you disagree, that is fine, but the idea of disengaging early is a social manipulation to remove advantage, but if you react in kind to oppose a group attack, the stage is set in favor of the attackers. As social beings, we lack the experimental insights beyond a one-on-one fight, binding our skills to flounder against multiple issues. Interestingly, there are people out there successfully dealing with groups such as leaders, entertainers and teachers. Ask yourself what techniques they use to keep the masses in check. So, what is the way to weaken the attacker's hold on you? This is always your decision. Remember, they are not the problem. The first mental trick to master is breaking ties with the attackers. The group is not going to give your freedom back because you say boo. They have become a collective, now hell-bent to do you harm, like a feeding frenzy in the wild. The approaching attackers clearly have indicated they have the lead and the power to demand submission. My original suggestion as a defense needs you to stay first by suppressing your normal response to connect with the problem and start living for yourself. The aim is to reset the collective drive of the group and get them to follow you. Ideally, you want to lead the situation by not being there in the first place. Any attempts to stand there and hit hard and knock them out, only stirs up the hornet's nest. Like a teacher and performer, reset the rules of engagement when facing many people. Hesitate and you have agreed to join the attacker's game, indicating you want to fight the impossible situation. All physical encounters exist because of connection, leaving you nowhere to go. It is only a matter of time when you will be hit on the back of the head from a coward's punch, if you engage. Strictly speaking, learning techniques always asks you to engage with attackers. Whatever your choice of technique, it is designed to connect with the one-on-one encounter. Again, I ask you, why would they come as a group to attack you? Simply, they take advantage of a normal person's reactions to fight back or submit. They instinctively have prepared for the worst you can deliver, knowing they have the firepower to counter anything you can concoct, even if the attackers have to resort to weapons. The problem always lies on your side of the court based on your acceptance of the gameplay. Why are you still considering you have a chance to control the approaching mayhem? Could you have prepared better? No, each situation is different. The best solution to any multiple attack is to avoid the encounter by correctly responding to early danger signals derived from situational awareness. This means delving into your inner weaknesses, making you stop and look. True violence never gives you a warning of a start, so why stand there rubbernecking? When there is more than one attacker, there is no rhyme or rhythm to the gameplay. People are coming in from all directions at different times. Interestingly, the flight response only works well when you have used your situational awareness skills before the attack takes place. The person meeting a truly violent situation has no choice but to activate the flight response to get out of there as fast as possible to find safety. When it comes to those social situations that start innocently and soon escalates into an uncontrollable multiple attack, will need a far more strategic disengagement strategy. In the martial arts world, you would hope effectiveness means money in the bank. A baseball bat on the street shows no mercy, it is always a welcome friend. When considering the energy world, it will not offer a slam dunk, it is meant to change your perspective away from the attackers and look for solutions from where you stand. It is our social mind that holds most people to ransom and draws us into danger. Now, do you want to fight? This is a social response question. How can you find a way to self-advocate for your safety and make your own decision, outside of social controls? I would like to shout out, it is as simple as avoiding your need to control social events around you. start by trying to leave the world alone and let things be. If you want to control events or a desire to assert yourself, stop and move your body to another room. The act of moving somewhere else is enough to suppress the need to interact. Not forgetting the natural response of humans needing relationship and connect to play their role. When you are alone, you have to negotiate with yourself to make life possible. Spoiler, there are only a few people comfortable with looking at themselves in the mirror. As an example of a self-determined soul, try understanding that wayward pet you brought home and without your permission just escaped out the window. I would think the pet has no master in mind yet, and from our point of view, needs to be socialized to be civil. Simply the animal has to learn to lose its freedom to connect by following your rules. To access the energy world, you will need to free your thoughts from the rules offered by your social masters. The socially organized attackers only want to take control and set the tone delivered by their authority. If you could imagine being a newly acquired wayward pet, social propositions would not be effective. So, rules are abounded in a multiple attack resulting in an overt disciplinary play of control saying they are the masters of the event. If you were the unconditioned, there are no social masters. Rules of engagement are learnt requiring your attention and responses. It is too much to ask a person to think outside the social box when rules are hammered into people long before a critical event occurs. If you have not established reality yet, it will take too much effort to control the attacking group. Hesitation is the defensive fighter's curse, and it will take a lot to break the rule-based connections. It is that habit of looking towards others to find solutions to your own inner problems. This is the passive approach to societal controls, no better than hiding behind elbows, bunkering, hoping to save your butt after a barrage. The idea of acquiring self-advocating skills is like water of a duck's back. The apparent and immediate problem to solve remains the attacking group. But what your mind's eye is focusing on is supporting social conditioning. Now, a violent proposition is a request for feedback, a connection to somebody else's problem, a submission to the gameplay. What happens? The urgency to solve a social threat takes precedence over the urgency to disconnect and find freedom and safety. Maybe, considering going to the toilet is really a good strategy if you have no intention to contest the situation. Alternatively, to fight means you are willing to stand there accepting all the social rules, thus confirming your participation. Even standing there doing nothing is a passive-aggressive move, leaving you open to being struck on the back of the head. I wonder if your training changes your viewpoint away from social rules or does it reinforce conforming behavior? I am sure it would feel very uncomfortable for you to sit on the toilet through a training session and never interact with your friends. It is like you were never there in the first place. Remember, by standing there on the floor is being present, a part of the playing field, connected to a set of social rules. Waiting is our passive way to react, stopping you making the early and active safety responses to a threat. To make it worse, standing there with your friends hesitating, forces you to consider all the social propositions. Waiting does not warn you to who is going to take away your liberty and when. Your impression, the problem is not yours. The attackers only need to see you hesitating to sense your connection, making you an easy target. Simply, you have lost your freedom long before the attackers have spotted your weaknesses. My advice, just learn to be invisible and actively disappear. Therefore, to participate in a street fight is like being on stage, frightening to know people are watching and targeting you. There is no right way to fight off many attackers. It would be wise not to get involved in the first place. I would think it would be like asking people not to accept money. Your perceived choices are supposed to be self-determined, free from influence. So, what is your knowledge advantage and why are you reacting? Your choices of clever misdirection are only short-term attempts to stall the attacking group. We want a response that sustains self-control for longer, countering social distractions that put you in danger. The reactive choice of a duck and weaver quickly detected and defeated. Counter-strategies are just a response in kind, helping the attackers win the day. I love watching experts try to blast their way through the attacking group, only to end up defeated when the group is well motivated. Each explosive response only connects them more to the attacker's intent, making the situation exponentially harder as it unfolds. It is not rocket science to know that all defensive approaches are looking to find the path of least resistance to exit the situation. But without having freedom from the attacker's resistance, the thought of an exit is easily lost. Freedom is always about beating the attacker's intent, meaning out-timing aggression, while technical approaches need to dominate and lock onto resistance to be effective. Achieving freedom on a personal level, you have to outrun the urge to connect with resistance, which saves valued defensive time. This means avoiding the social proposition of having to fight, making you stand your ground, allowing everyone time to rain on you. On the other hand, to outrun everyone's intent is based on the ability to act early, be first and leave the situation. This cannot be achieved by playing the short game based on start and stop approaches of techniques. The strategy of outrunning intent is a game with no end, while maintaining your freedom. The energy world has no weapons that force you to attach to resistance, thus opening doors the path of least resistance. Techniques only obscure the path to the exit, always driving you to engage to achieve control. When facing a group attack, relying on effective resistance becomes a marriage of destruction. So, what is the technique of choice in the energy world? Well, there are no recognizable techniques. It is more about consistent movement and understanding the effect of your body mass on the opponent. These two elements create the continuity of mass movement, encapsulating the qualities needed to play the long game. There is no sense of a beginning or end of a movement, hence nothing like applying techniques, start and stop, reload sensations. The immediate goal is to maintain speed and a clear sense of progression to an exit. Hence the aim is to outrun the attacker's intent before they find a way to trap you. It is the art of avoiding resistance. The question always asked by the self is, how free do you feel at any time during the encounter? In the resistance world, exponents ask questions like, what do you do when taken to ground, long before the fight takes place? Techniques offer lots of resistance even before the fight begins, requiring the mental comfort of having effective solutions before the fight, hence the need to make sure they are trained to perfection. The expectancy approach to battle is quickly hampered when 10 attackers are bearing down on you. The measure of the resistance world's effectiveness is based on anticipation, that is seeing concussion, pain and suffocation. While the energy world's approach is to focus on freedom first amid possible resistance. This means never mentally connect with the opponent or stand still to submit to an impact, move and focus on leading the situation and avoid controlling any one attacker. Doing the job of knocking someone out in a group attack is not leading the situation, as the rest of the attackers are still descending on you. The martial artist's obsessions towards doing serious damage are their delusory gauge of predicting future success. Strangely, damage is not a measure of success in the energy world, but its focus of mass movement can cause serious injuries too, like a fast-moving train, breaking everything in its path. But this is an unintended side effect and has no relationship to the central focus of freedom from resistance and leading the situation. Therefore, damage is not a valued commodity in a group attack, breaking the intent of the attackers is. If attackers are eager to cut you off and stand in your path, they will prepare for impact. But your aim is not to reciprocate, but to outrun the intent of the attackers and avoid the reason to connect. This means to have no urge to battle with the opposing resistance. The energy world is based on a disconnecting strategy that aims to maintain one's freedom and speed, where the resistance world exponent is focused on submitting the opponent's free motion. This is really an understanding of the battle between fight and flight as a way of achieving outcomes. To suggest the mass effect aims to control others would be incorrect. At no time do you intend to check if the impact was successful at causing damage. It's a consequence, not a targeting strategy. In the energy world it is about moving freely without hesitation, avoiding all forms of connection. But when you are in the resistance world, everything is seen as a problem, which involves an intimate connection with an opponent that needs to be submitted. The energy world is uncharted territory for most martial artists. Pundits in the natural world are currently conditioned to fight by rule, expectations and resistance. Most of the best developments in the martial arts world occurs in semi-pressured games, based on some technical snapshot from actual combat. Hours are spent repeating and perfecting strategies mimicking actual fight moments without the intent to do real harm. This works well for the short game where there is lots of starts, stops and reloads to eventually achieve one's desired dominance of the encounter. This does not suit the long game played out by having to deal with multiple attackers, where there are no breaks as such and any attempt to reload does not end well. The mental highlight of a group attack is the realization of real-time pressures that are unrelenting and unforgiving. So, the focus has to be more on continuity of movement, compared to those step-by-step, one-on-one technical fights. Traditionally, the power of a martial art was encapsulated by a deception of an individual's true intent, hidden by an undisclosed preemptive big hit that was to emphasize effectiveness outside the fighting ring. But a group attack is another situation altogether, unfolding in all directions at high speeds with no limits to what weapons the attackers will exploit. Anticipation, expectation, and hesitation are the three curses found in the resistance world. Each one hinders any attempt to maintain speed, splits attention, and stalls progress to safety. Technical solutions by their nature will slow people down. Slow progress means you will see and feel too much, creating a mental avalanche of problems to solve. Speed equates to the most efficient use of your brain that increases effectiveness of movements when engulfed by a stressful situation. Fighting resistance wastes time and energy, trapping you to the end. The energy world has no desire to win anything from others, just a desire to remain free from being slowed. Are you the person who must always look into a review mirror, checking your successes against a comparative imagined event? There is no imagined victory or delusions of grandeur when you are moving at speed, so any imaginings of performance outside the event are delusions. People in the energy world are attracted to experiencing the world unfold in real time by exposing themselves to the chaos offered by a group encounter exercise. There is no time wasted trying to chance a prediction under these circumstances. This is helped by understanding there are no rules linked to one's continuity of motion and no set focuses to get stuck on. The exercises also help you to access your self-discipline skills that will suppress your selfish social desires of dominance over others. All you want is to be better than you were yesterday and stay free. Our beloved world is beset by lots of passive-aggressive people wanting your liberty to be disrupted for their self-gain. It is in your own interest to counter this and neutralize these unwelcome manipulations. We are socially and culturally bound to answer aggressive questions, trapping us into a cycle of unintentional violence. There are many parallels with nature's mating game, resulting in an eventual public cockfight. It is when that subtle delivery of aggression passes that threshold, then we jump into the social nightmare of lawless behavior. Even for the best of us, it must be scary to face a hungry pack of human wolves. From sarcastic beginnings, there is nothing to gain except more pain when fighting back against the impossible problem like a multiple attack. You could ask yourself, why is the eventual fight for dominance always a losing game? To consider a fight as a choice, it has to include loss as an outcome. You want to feel good, be fit, get muscled up, have those skills that bear respect, be that powerhouse of a person depicted in those movies, and still be ignorant about the real dangers being faced. What does it take to be confident and finally stand there victorious? If you think like this, stay away from multiple attacks, they are dangerous, beyond any imaginings. Without saying it too loudly, it is understandable the passive-aggressive world has been powering up for too many challenges, but it is not designed for a multiple attack. Thanks for listening. Part 2b is next. It will focus on strategy.